This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schomler. This is Strong Opinion Sports, episode 623. Welcome in. Today, before we do anything, I got to tell you, today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks allows you to make an entry based on player projections, and in 60 seconds, you could enter something like George Kittle less than 5 catches, A.J. Brown more than 100 yards receiving, and Jordan Love more than 2 interceptions. If your picks are right, you can win money. Making picks makes watching games more engaging, and you could turn something like $5 into $50. Prize Picks offers quick and easy deposits. You can even use Apple Pay, and they have weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts. For example, there's a weekly event called Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So put your skills to the test in daily fantasy. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CLNS, code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. All right, let's jump into football. Let's escape the real world and focus on the thing that brings us joy. Football, video games, whatever it is for you. For me, it's football. On Thursday Night Football, the Raiders beat the Chargers. Let me be very clear here. I want you to hear the number because it's insane. The Raiders beat the Chargers. Actually, the Raiders destroyed the Chargers 63-21. And again, 63-21. It was 42-0 at halftime. It was a embarrassing, sad blowout. To be fair, the Chargers did not have their quarterback, Justin Herbert, playing. Look, the Chargers had a defensive head coach, Brandon Staley. You can't have the players they have on defense, the record you have, and then lose 63-21 and give up 63 points. No field goals in this game, by the way. Touchdown, back and forth. I want to say something, by the way, that's really wild to me about this football game. The Raiders beat the Chargers Thursday Night Football. It's a while ago now. 4 days before that, the Sunday before scoring 63 points, the Raiders lost to Minnesota 3-0. 3-0, they lose to Minnesota. Then 4 days later, they beat the Chargers 63-21. I don't know. I just really like Antonio Pierce, the Raiders head coach, the interim head coach, who I would not mind at all if he stuck around. And when they didn't score any points, they lost 3-0. I was like, oh man, I really like this guy. They've lost 3 in a row. I'm not sure you can keep him as the head coach for next year. But then you do what they did on Thursday, beat the stuffing out of the Chargers, end a coach's career or head coaching tenure at minimum. Brandon Staley did get fired. We'll talk about it. It makes me just say, that's if you're gonna, have a comeback mounted and try to finish the year off strong and save your job and stick around in Las Vegas. I think Antonio Pierce is putting that together. I really want to see Antonio Pierce stick around. The Raiders, I don't feel great about their future regardless, but at least they got a coach who seems competent, who cares, does little things right. If they do that for 2 years and then they're just kind of average, hey, I'm fine with that. It's better than the awful disaster they've been. I really like Antonio Pierce. Watching him win 63-21 was awesome on Thursday night. You love that. Now, the big story, though, we got to talk about, obviously, is that finally, after... I don't want to be mean-spirited because I really think that Brandon Staley comes across like a really kind man who created a culture that I would enjoy working in, right? He does things in a way that seems like he creates a good working environment. But he should have been fired a long time ago. I can't believe he's still at a job after last year. I guess they did make a playoff game, but they were awful. This year, they start terrible. They're 5-9. And finally, after losing 63-21, the Chargers fired Brandon Staley. Seems like a nice guy. Nothing against him. He was in way over his head. He should never have been the head coach there. And given the talent they have and the money they've spent on that roster, you can't be 5-9 and lose a game like this. Brandon Staley's out. The question next, though, is what do the Chargers do for their next head coach? A lot of people want Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. He's a great offensive coordinator doing a lot of stuff. A lot of people want to, I think they're trying to find the next Kyle Shanahan or Mike McDaniel or insert any young offensive coach who's doing great things. That's the future of the NFL is young offensive coaching, and that's what people are trying to find. So I understand Ben Johnson as the motivating factor. You look at Mike McDaniel in Miami and go, I want that. I want the young guy. I want Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. I want a young, awesome offensive head coach. I want Sean McVay with the Rams. I get that. Is Ben Johnson Mike McDaniel? No, nobody is. Is he Sean McVay? No, nobody is. Is he Kyle Shanahan even? No, nobody else is. But I understand wanting to replicate that success and going after a young offensive coach and hoping you got the right guy. So Ben Johnson is out there. He might become the next head coach of the Chargers, and I understand that. Makes sense to me. The thing that interests me a lot, and the coach that I'm fascinated in the idea of him being hired by the Chargers. I really would like to see Bill Belichick as head coach of the Chargers. I know here's what I would do. You have Justin Herbert. He's an amazing quarterback. You've got some really good offensive weapons on offense. You've got Kellen Moore, an offensive coordinator who I really like. You keep Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. You hire Bill Belichick to run their defense, which let me tell you some of the names on this defense. Derwin James, Asante Samuel. You had J.C. Jackson. You're still paying him. I don't know why you couldn't bring him back. Joey Bosa, Kenneth Murray, Eric Kendricks, Khalil Mack, Tuli Pelotu. Like, really, I can't even say, sorry, I butchered that name. I apologize. You got star players everywhere on this defense. A lot of potential for a good defense. Imagine what Bill Belichick could do with a defense that already has a lot of potential. Then you pair that with, maybe Justin Herbert scoring a lot of points, coached by Kellen Moore on the offensive side of the football. I actually like that plan. So if Bill Belichick does go to the Chargers, I'm actually really interested and excited about that. Asante Samuel Jr., man. He coached his dad. How cool would that be? The question, though, if you hire Bill Belichick, who's the general manager? Because Bill Belichick is not only the head coach of the Patriots, he's their general manager. He picks the players as well. And part of the problem with the Patriots recently, the reason why the Patriots are 3-11 is because the players he picked aren't doing very well. They got a great defense and a horrible offense. Do you want Bill Belichick building your roster if you're the Chargers? I'm not sure. So maybe the safe move is to hire Ben Johnson, a young offensive coach, and a GM, the responsible, normal way everyone does it. But the thing that fascinates me, the idea that makes me go, oh, man. Tom Brady left the Patriots and won a Super Bowl with Tampa. Could Bill Belichick leave New England and win a Super Bowl with another team? If he's going to do it anywhere, it's the Chargers with Justin Herbert. And, gosh, man, the players they have on offense are incredible. And at their best, they've got a really good offensive line. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Joshua Palmer, Austin Eckler, who seems like he's just run out of gas and not the same player he used to be. But on paper, the roster in LA with the Chargers is incredible. They needed a coach for the longest time who could get the most value out of their team. They were underachieving and have been every single year. Say what you want about Bill Belichick. He's always appeared to get the most out of his players. And so the guy that, I don't know that Ben Johnson's going to win a Super Bowl for the Chargers. I think Bill Belichick might be able to do that. So I'm fascinated to see. The hiring process for the Chargers is going to be really interesting and really fun to see what happens. But the two guys that really come to mind to me, Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, and Bill Belichick, who is rumored to maybe be getting fired after this year in New England. Let's talk about Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns beat Chicago 20-17. And this game was ugly and not a like amazing, obvious, clear, great victory for the Browns, but they made it happen. They won the game anyway. The Browns are 9-5. They snuck away with the win at the end of the game in the fourth quarter. I mean, they snuck away. If you watch this game live, came down to the final play. The Bears throw a Hail Mary into the end zone. It looked like for half a second a touchdown for the Bears. And I was like, oh no. Oh my gosh, you come back. This amazing comeback. Joe Flacco throws 3 interceptions, still bounces back, scores 13 points in the fourth quarter. They take the lead, and then a Hail Mary is how they lose. All of that happened in half of a second in my brain. I was like, no way. This is not going to happen this way. The Browns won, makes me happy. The Browns are awesome. They're 9-5. The Browns have to be the story of the year. I don't think, if this was happening to any team but Cleveland, it would be a much bigger story. I think because it's Cleveland and it's the Browns and they're historically awful. I am telling you, if Dallas or Philly or the Jets or Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, if anyone else was 9-5 with the story of the Browns, it'd be front page headlines everywhere in the NFL. The Browns lost to their quarterback, their running back, half their offensive line, player after player. Like half of the team in Cleveland is injured. And they're still 9-5 and might be a Super Bowl contender. In fact, I would say they are a contender. They might be able to win a Super Bowl. Like that. It's amazing. And you know what's even crazier about this story with Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco, quarterback who won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, got replaced by Lamar Jackson. Do you remember that? When Joe Flacco was old and not playing great, they said, hey, we got this guy Lamar Jackson. He's fast. He's amazing. He's a great athlete. He's the future of the NFL. We're going to replace you, Joe Flacco, with Lamar Jackson. Ended his career. They shipped off Joe Flacco. He ended up in New York for a little while with the Jets. Retires, basically, walks away. Mid-season, the Browns are like, we need a quarterback. You want to come back, Joe Flacco? He does. Guess who feels like they're on a collision course? I think the AFC title game, the game to get into the Super Bowl, could be the Cleveland Browns and Joe Flacco against his former team and the quarterback who replaced him, Lamar Jackson. I don't know if that's going to work out where that's actually the AFC title game. The bracket might be different. We might end up with that as like a divisional game or something like that. But a playoff game. Joe Flacco and the Browns going back to Baltimore to play Lamar Jackson and the Ravens is amazing. That idea makes me so happy. I want that so badly. And my goodness, it was so much fun to watch this incredible win. I am telling you, like, the talent level in Cleveland is unreal. Go watch, if you haven't seen the highlights, go find Amari Cooper's touchdown from the fourth quarter. Man, dude, it was crazy. I was like, I can't believe he is doing what he's doing where he is. Joe Flacco, Amari Cooper, like, it was such a fun game to watch. And like I always hope for, the fourth quarter of, like, the Browns game came down to the fourth quarter. The very final play of the game literally mattered. And that always makes me happy. Buffalo beat Dallas 31-10 on Sunday. To me, first of all, it's a really impressive statement win from the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have had a really ugly year. It's been up and down and a lot of ugly moments, but the Bills are now 8-6. If the playoffs started today, the Bills would be the number 9 seed. So they're still not a playoff team. But if Buffalo does get into a playoff game, this game felt like a statement like, oh, they're really dangerous. I think the Dallas Cowboys are a really good football team. They got embarrassed by Buffalo. 31-10. It was shocking. It was surprising. I thought this was going to be a good game. If one team did blow another team out, I thought Dallas might blow out Buffalo, to be honest. Dak Prescott, the Cowboys quarterback, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 134 yards passing, 21 for 34 passing. To me, first of all, Dak is out of the MVP conversation after this. I think that when you look at, it's probably going to be Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, or Christian McCaffrey, if we're honest. One of those three is going to win the NFL MVP. I think this game was the nail in the coffin that ended any kind of MVP consideration for Dak Prescott. You can't have a goose egg in a big game and do what he did here on Sunday. So Dak is probably out for an MVP. Literally a week ago, I was saying Dak for MVP. Now I'm like, well, you can't do that compared to everyone else. That's going to probably lose you the MVP conversation. So Buffalo, I'm not sure if they're going to make a playoff game, but they showed us they can beat anybody. And Dallas just had another really concerning loss. A loss that makes me go, oh, man. I have been trying. You guys know, I am a doubter of the Cowboys. I always have been my entire life. People every year go, it's our year in Dallas. And I laugh at them and go, no way. This is the year I finally, for the first time in my life, thought, you know what? The Cowboys might have it this year. They might be able to put together a Super Bowl run. And then this happens. And I'm like, now I don't know what to believe anymore. In fact, the more I watch the Dallas Cowboys, the less I feel like I know about them. Do you remember when they lost 42-10 to the 49ers early in the year? And I went, that cannot happen. That's horrible. And then they went on. They won before losing this game. They won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in a row. Then they go to Buffalo and get smoked. And I just like, what Super Bowl contending team has gotten embarrassed twice this year? Losing is one thing. I guess, Buffalo did embarrass Miami earlier this year. But I so badly want to believe that Dallas Cowboys are a team that could win a Super Bowl this year, or even get to a Super Bowl and maybe lose, which would be more fun. I've talked about that. The Cowboys losing a Super Bowl would be amazing and like good television and good storylines and so much fun. But I'm not sure they can get there. I want to believe in them. I want to think they can do it. But you had that awful loss to the 49ers earlier this year, and then you do this on Sunday in Buffalo, and I'm like, man, like, I just don't trust Dallas, and I wish I could, but I don't. And that's another concerning loss for the Dallas Cowboys, one that will be hard for me to move on from. When you break my trust like that, I go, I want it. I want to believe in you. I just can't. On Sunday Night Football, the Ravens beat the Jaguars 23-7. I don't know, man. The Jaguars didn't have their best game. And Lamar Jackson, every time I watch him, is fun to watch. I like Lamar Jackson. Statistically, didn't have a huge game. I guess he ran for 97 yards, which is like, I don't know, man. I think that the Ravens are very quietly the best team in the AFC. I mean, I think they are right now the number 1 seed, so maybe it's not quietly. But I don't hear anyone talking about how, I mean, mind you, I don't feel like I'm present in the conversation. I try not to listen to other people in the media, for example. But I think the Ravens are somehow like quietly underrated. In fact, if the playoffs started today, the Ravens would be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and that makes sense to me. They've had some really impressive victories. Do you remember when they beat the tar out of Detroit 38-6? They beat Seattle 37-3. Like, the games they've lost, they lost to Indy by 3. They lost to Pittsburgh by a touchdown, and they lost to Cleveland, an incredibly good Cleveland Browns team. They lost to them by 2. The Ravens are a team that I just feel like is not getting enough conversation. We might be looking at a Ravens-49ers rematch in the Super Bowl. Now, the way to get there is going to be so fun. Maybe you play a game against Joe Flacco. Maybe Brock Purdy plays the Cowboys in the AFC title game. We get a Cowboys 90s rematch between the 49ers and Cowboys. The way the playoffs are going to work out is going to be, I think, really incredible storyline-wise. But at the end of the day, I think the 2 best teams right now in football today are the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. The record shows that too. They're both 11-3. They're both fantastic. But this was another, I would call it 23-7 on Sunday night against the Jaguars. Isn't exactly a blowout, but it was a dominating victory. And I guess it wasn't, how do I say it? I mean, it was close for a while. The fourth quarter is really when the Ravens kind of took a step and kind of took the lead and walked away from it. How do I say, how's the right way to put that? That's when they ran away with the lead, I guess is the right way to put that, in the fourth quarter. But to me, somehow I'm not seeing Ravens Super Bowl hype all over social media, and I feel like we should, because the Ravens are great defense, a really incredible quarterback who is making good decisions. He's running the ball really well. I think Lamar Jackson might win another MVP this year, actually. Like, he's in the conversation for sure. Should be. But the MVP is Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, or Brock Purdy, in my opinion. It would be MVP number 2 for Lamar Jackson, which maybe keeps him from getting votes, actually, because people like the new fun story. But I don't know. Maybe he doesn't win an MVP. He wins a Super Bowl instead. Keep your eye on the Baltimore Ravens. On Monday Night Football, Seattle beat Philly 20-17. And, oh, man. This game was, how do I even put this properly? Philly has lost 3 games in a row. The Eagles are not in the best shape, in my opinion. Their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, threw 2 interceptions and no touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, I haven't gone out and said he's awful or anything, but he's had moments this year where I'm like, you got a lot of turnovers, bud. A lot of interceptions, multiple fumbles. You've now lost 3 in a row. Now, Philly lost 3 in a row to the 49ers, Dallas, and now Seattle. So 2 great football teams, I think, and then a really good Seattle team that played them really well. But I understand if there's concern mounting in Philly. I get it. Now, here's the good news if you're an Eagles fan. The Eagles have lost 3 in a row. They're 10-4. However, their final 3 games, they play the Giants twice in Arizona. 3 cupcake games to kind of put everything right and get ready for the playoffs. Now, they made a move. They had Matt Patricia calling the plays on defense this week. It's a Philly team that is trying to make adjustments, and it feels a bit desperate, actually. I think Philly is getting really concerned that they're not ready. They're lost 3 games in a row, and I think there's a anxiousness and a tension coming out of Philly. A tension like, I want to make this work. I'm not sure I can. This eager, anxious feeling that appears to be emanating from the franchise, the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, making a change like that, changing your defensive play caller. Everyone's calling out the play calling on offense. There's a lot of angst right now in Philly. There always is, but I think it's actually justified right now, losing 3 games in a row to some good football teams. To me, though, the story of this game, Monday Night Football, Drew Lock, the guy who I thought at one point Drew Lock was going to be the franchise quarterback in Denver, who didn't end up working out. He gets traded to Seattle. He's the backup quarterback behind Geno Smith. Got an opportunity, started the game on Monday at home against Philly, and it was awesome. Making big-time throws. The fourth quarter of this game, the final drive for Seattle, Drew Lock was outstanding, making a couple really nice throws to DK Metcalf, then a long touchdown to Jackson Smith-Njigba for the win. Drew Lock was 22 for 33 passing at 208 yards and a touchdown, including the game-winning touchdown. And my favorite thing about the entire story when it comes to Drew Lock is not only are you seeing Drew Lock in the post-game press conference, or I guess the post-game interview, giving this really heartfelt answer about how hard it's been. You got to keep believing in yourself. And there were times where he doubted himself. And he shared the human experience of when it's tough and you're battling. And I really, if you haven't listened to Drew Lock postgame after beating Philly with the walk-off game-winning touchdown, you should look up the postgame interview, because he really kind of reaches for your emotional heartstrings and you go, oh, like, that's compelling. I love that. But the other thing about Drew Lock from this game that was really cool, when he throws the game-winning touchdown pass to Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's got this signature celebration he's done since college. I don't know if I can do it very well. I'm going to try it on camera, but he kind of goes like, he shrugs his shoulders and goes like, yeah, like he does like this thing where he pulls one shoulder in, then he pulls the other in, and kind of like, it's like he's locking, like reloading a weapon or something, right? I don't even know how to put it, but it's like this little shoulder move he does. You see Drew Lock throw the game-winning touchdown pass, and Geno Smith, who has been the starting quarterback all year and last year, who was healthy enough to suit up for this game but not start, which is weird. Is he healthy and they're not playing him? Is he benched? I'm not really sure what's going on. Drew Lock plays all game, and nobody was celebrating with Drew Lock more than Geno Smith, the other quarterback in Seattle. He was doing Drew Lock's celebration with him, the shoulder thing. And I'm like, it brought me back to when Jalen Hurts was in college behind Tua Tagovailoa in Alabama and was the backup quarterback who lost his job and was still classy, and not only classy, but like genuinely happy when Tua did good stuff. Like, he's celebrating, he's happy to win, he's rooting for the guy competing against him every week. I don't know what the quarterback situation is in Seattle right now. I don't fully understand. Are they benching Geno? He's healthy, but he's not playing. He did get hurt. He's not fully healthy. Drew Lock's playing, though. If Drew Lock gets hurt, I think Geno does come in the game, which is weird. If he's healthy enough to play, why aren't you starting him? I have a lot of questions about Seattle, but the coolest thing ever is that these two guys put their egos aside and want to win games and root for each other. And that's a rare thing in sports, to find a player like Geno who, is trying to help Drew Lock and has no ego. And, Drew Lock said he's really appreciative of Geno Smith and the way he roots for him. The relationship, clearly, we saw it on display on Monday Night Football. Really, really cool to see. Very rare and very exciting. Now let's go back to Saturday. On Saturday, Cincinnati beat Minnesota 27-24 in overtime. Lot to talk about here. First of all, Jake Browning did it again. Jake Browning won another game with the Cincinnati Bengals, but he's also not only winning, he's playing well. He's playing good football. He's doing good stuff. I thought at some point the Jake Browning story was going to come to an end. And I'm still waiting. Maybe it will. Like the Tommy DeVito storyline. This, Tommy touchdowns, Tommy Cutlets, whatever you want to call him. The backup quarterback who won a couple of games in a row in New York. That appeared to come to an end this Sunday. I'm still waiting. Is it going to happen in Cincinnati? But Jake Browning's playing great football. He really is doing high-level good stuff. And it's just cool to see and cool to root for. I really like watching a guy do well. The Bengals, with Jake Browning, have won 3 games in a row. They beat Jacksonville, Indy, and Minnesota. All 3 teams are in the playoff conversation. These are good quality victories, and I love it, man. Now, Jake Browning, remember, he was cut multiple times by the Minnesota Vikings. After the game, he's like, you shouldn't have blanking cut me. And he now has said he regrets the revenge angle to this victory. But still, when you're in a building and they fire you or someone dumps you or you are in a situation where someone rejects you and pushes you down, it always feels good to succeed, especially in full view of the people who rejected you. And so Jake Browning, 29 for 42 passing, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception on Saturday, beating his former team Minnesota in overtime. Really, really cool story. Love to see it. Jake Browning, how long is this going to go? Right now, the Bengals are 8-6. If the playoffs started today, the Bengals would in fact be the number 6 seed in the AFC. Can they keep winning? Their next couple games, they play at Pittsburgh, they play at Kansas City, and then they play Cleveland. Those are 3 tough games all in a row. At Pittsburgh, really tough environment, and a team that, they're trying. The Bengals are trying to make it so that Pittsburgh doesn't have a winning record this year, which would be wild and interesting. At Kansas City against Patrick Mahomes, can Jake Browning go to Kansas City and beat Patrick Mahomes on New Year's Eve? That's a really interesting question. And then January 7th against Cleveland, who I think is a Super Bowl contender, can Jake Browning win? If he goes 3, if they win 6 in a row to end the year and they make a playoff game, I will be. I don't know how to feel about that yet. I think that's wild, and I really am rooting for Jake Browning. It's a cool story, and he's playing good football. That's it. He's not just like barely winning. He's doing a great job too, and so I am fascinated if Jake Browning can keep it going. I'm emotionally exhausted by these backup quarterbacks who come in. They have a couple of good games and they flame out. Josh Dobbs, Tommy Cutlets, Ryan Fitzpatrick. There's always been quarterbacks my whole life. They're like, hey, come in and have a couple of good games and they flame out. Is Jake Browning going to flame out on the road at Pittsburgh this weekend? Possibly. Wouldn't be shocking, but I'm rooting for the guy. And I think he's a really, really cool story. Also on Saturday, Indy beat Pittsburgh 30-13. So the Colts right now are the number 7 seed in the AFC. That's great for them. The Colts look pretty good. And Gardner Minshew, how can you not love Gardner freaking Minshew, man? The way the guy plays football is messy and beautiful and fun, and I really, really like the guy. There's not a lot of great players around him. Guys are getting hurt. And he's still making it happen. 3 touchdowns, 18 for 28 passing on Saturday against Pittsburgh. Mitchell Trubisky was the starting quarterback for Pittsburgh. He had 2 interceptions. He got benched. We now know Mason Rudolph will be the starting quarterback this next week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh is 7-7 with 3 games left to go. And I believe it's a 17-year streak that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. That might come to an end this year. And I am honestly, I don't know why exactly. When I psychologically examine why I feel this way, I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because I'm tired. I think here's why. I think I'm tired of the argument when people defend Mike Tomlin. They go, well, he's never had a losing season. It's like, well, how about we end that argument forever? I'm tired of that. I want to see him doing something recently. So Mike Tomlin going 7-10, 8-9 would make me very happy. Him having a losing record, so we just don't have to hear that nonsense anymore. Well, he's never had a losing season would make me feel great. So I'm rooting for that, actually. I really want to see Pittsburgh lose 2 of their next 3 games, so they have a losing record to end the year. Not in a mean-spirited way. I just feel like people really lean on this weird argument that's like, okay, never had a losing season, but what about playoff wins? What about Super Bowls? What about high-level great football teams? Surviving and being mediocre isn't actually impressive to me. It shouldn't be. And I think I would be really happy to see that half of the conversation gone when it comes to Mike Tomlin. A guy I like and would love to play for, by the way. Respect him a ton. But let's when you're going to talk about how great of a coach he is, how about a different argument than winning season every year? Because that maybe can end this year. That would make me very happy. Detroit beat Denver 42-17 on Saturday. It was a tough one for the Denver Broncos. I really was hoping and thinking this was going to be a great game, and it was a blowout. It was an easy victory for Detroit. They led 21-0 at halftime. Jared Goff, the Lions quarterback, was 24 for 34 passing at 278 yards and 5 touchdowns on the day. Remember, Sean Payton's head coach of Denver. Denver's 7-7 with a shot at the playoffs, but a long shot right now because of how tight the AFC is. In the AFC, you got 4 teams that are 8-6 battling for the final 2, wild card spots. Then you've got Pittsburgh and Denver at 7-7, also in the mix. I'm not sure if Denver's going to make a playoff game. But remember, Sean Payton is coach of the Denver Broncos. Dan Campbell, the coach of the Lions, used to coach under him in New Orleans. He was the tight ends coach in New Orleans under Sean Payton. This had to be a really emotional, fun victory for Dan Campbell to beat his former head coach, Sean Payton. It's just cool to see. I really like Dan Campbell. Watching Jared Goff play great is always fun. And I think Denver has a shot at the playoffs, but this loss definitely hurt them. And even more so, I thought it was going to be a good game. I thought Denver could challenge Detroit, and unfortunately, wasn't so. And I'm surprised by that, disappointed by that, and that is what it is. On Sunday, Miami beat the Jets 30-0. This was a rough, sad, awful loss. Not much to say, honestly. Like, Miami's good. They continue. Miami has beat up on a lot of really bad football teams this year. I almost wonder when we look back on the Dolphins' schedule, are we going to say, wow, the Dolphins played a lot of really easy cupcake games. They're 10-4, but they're beating, the Chargers, the Patriots, Denver, the Giants, Carolina, Patriots again, the Raiders, the Jets, Washington, the Jets again. Like, their 10 wins are often not impressive. In fact, I can't really list a single impressive victory they have. They lost to Buffalo badly. They lost to Philly 31-17. They lost to Kansas City, and they lost to Tennessee in horrifying fashion, by the way. I'm not saying Miami's a fraud. I am saying they haven't beat anybody of substance all year. The final 3 games of the year for Miami, they played Dallas, who's just coming off of a bad loss. They play at Baltimore, who's the number 1 seed in the AFC, and then they play Buffalo on January 7th. Oh boy. I think we're going to learn a lot about Miami these next 3 games and really kind of be able to judge, are they a great team or are they a good team that's beating up on awful teams? Because they were beat up on an awful Jets team on Sunday. And I have to say, I don't know what the future of the Jets are. I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator, is going to stay. I don't know if they're going to fire their head coach. I don't know if Zach Wilson's going to be there next year. There's all these questions about the future of the Jets. The only thing that feels good is I think they're going to bring Aaron Rodgers back. I think he wants to be there. And I'd like to see... I feel really sad about what could have been this year because I think Aaron Rodgers with the Jets would have been really fun and interesting. Instead, we got Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson. Sorry, we got the Jets and Zach Wilson, who... It wasn't supposed to happen, man. And I just want to say I am so sad to see the Jets where they are right now. It's disappointing. It's concerning. And their future, man, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't coming back next year, the Jets' future would be in absolute shambles. Now, because they've got Aaron Rodgers, I think coming back, there's some excitement there. But, I mean, they are, without Aaron, clearly an awful football team, and it's not gone well at all. The Rams beat Washington 28-20. I maintain, I say this every week, when you watch Matthew Stafford, the Rams quarterback, he does like insane stuff every game that gets totally overlooked. He makes throws that you go, that's not possible, right? You can't be looking left and throw a comeback on the right side of the field and your body is pointed left, but you throw a really difficult outbreaking route to the right side of the field. That's not possible, and yet he did it against Washington this past weekend. And every time I watch Matthew Stafford, he's doing crazy stuff that you're like, there's like 3 people alive who can make that throw, and Matthew Stafford is one of them. I know he's on a bad football team. I don't want to say, the Rams aren't a bad team. They're an exciting team, which means they're not great. They're like fun to watch, and they can compete, but what are the Rams right now? The Rams are 7-7, really, really young. If Matthew Stafford was on the Eagles, he would be viewed as the number one, like, he might be viewed as the best quarterback in football right now. Like, I really think that Matthew Stafford is having like an incredible year buried on kind of a mediocre football team this year. And if Matthew Stafford, like I said, if he was in Detroit right now, if he was in Philly, if he was in Miami, if he was in Dallas, Matthew Stafford would be the king of the NFL right now. He's getting kind of overlooked and I think very much underrated given what he's doing. I really hope the Rams can make a playoff game. I'm not sure they're going to. The Rams are the number 7 seed right now. So if the playoffs started today with 3 games left, the Rams would be in. They would be a playoff team. There's a lot of 7-7 teams in the NFC. Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, the Rams. I really hope the Rams make a playoff game because I think they would give us a really fun, exciting playoff game. But even more than that, I really hope, really, really, really hope the Rams get the number 6 seed in the NFC. Because that's where I'm pretty sure the Detroit Lions are going to be matched up against. The Lions are the number 3 seed. If the Rams can get to the number 6 seed, we're going to have a playoff game in Detroit where Matthew Stafford is the opposing quarterback against his former team, the Detroit Lions, having the best year they've ever had. That is amazing television that I want so badly to happen. Kansas City beat the Patriots on Sunday, 27-17. What do you say about this game? I don't even know. Like, it's expected. The Patriots are 3-11 now, and it's justifiable to ask, is Bill Belichick still going to be the coach next year of the Patriots, and should he be? I'm not sure he should. Things are going badly in New England, and I'm disappointed that I don't feel anything when the research I've done on this game. I'm like, I don't care. I don't know, man. It's a weird one, and I'm curious if anyone watched this game. I didn't watch this one. It's one of the few I didn't watch this week. I don't know what to make of this. Taylor Swift was there. I don't know, man. The 49ers beat Arizona 45-29. It was expected. The conversation after this game is, who's the MVP candidate on the 49ers roster? Is it Brock Purdy, who had 4 touchdowns and was 16 for 25 passing? Or is it Christian McCaffrey, who had a touchdown run, 2 touchdown catches? He had a total of almost 200 yards total from scrimmage. Christian McCaffrey right now on the year has run for 13 touchdowns. He's also caught Let me find it. Christian McCaffrey has caught 7 touchdowns. So he's got a total of 20 touchdowns on the year. I like the idea of Christian McCaffrey winning the NFL MVP simply because he's not a quarterback. And I've always wished we could just separate quarterback from every other position. Who's the best non-quarterback in the NFL would be a more interesting award, honestly, anyway. But it's funny to watch the interviews and the conversation behind the scenes because Brock Purdy keeps saying Christian McCaffrey should be MVP, and McCaffrey says Brock Purdy should be MVP, and I don't know what's going to happen here, but the NFL MVP award, let's look up the betting odds. NFL MVP betting odds. Who is the favorite from Vegas right now? Brock Purdy's the favorite, then Lamar Jackson, then Dak Prescott, then Josh Allen, and you don't get to McCaffrey until 7th, after Jalen Hurts. So the favorites right now, according to Vegas right now, betting favorites. Brock Purdy's the favorite, then Lamar Jackson, then Dak Prescott, then Josh Allen, then Jalen Hurts, and then finally Christian McCaffrey. And if you want to know the rest of it, it's Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, Tua, and Trevor Lawrence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks on a list of 10 guys. What are we doing at the MVP award? McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill have been way more valuable to their team than I think Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. Why is he on this list? I have no idea. I don't know. It's Vegas odds. It doesn't really matter. It's weird to me. God, we got a couple Monday night games coming up on Christmas this week. That's going to be really fun and exciting. Houston beat Tennessee 19-16. CJ Stroud did not play. So Houston found a way without their quarterback, which I like to see. Unfortunately, CJ Stroud may not play again next week for Houston, which is like Houston right now is not only in a battle to make a playoff game as a wild card team, they also might win their division. They got a shot to win their division. And so they play the next 3 games. Next week, Houston plays Cleveland, a Cleveland Browns team that is 9-5, really playing good football right now. And Houston might be playing that game without their quarterback, CJ Stroud, who's still in concussion protocol Wednesday, over a week after getting the concussion. It's concerning. And I think CJ Stroud not playing would be massive. I'm worried about that. Also, by the way, weird story, but I'm seeing this right now in front of me. Houston assigned Tim Boyle to their practice squad. Remember Tim Boyle, the guy who's never thrown more touchdowns than interceptions in his entire college or professional career? How is this guy still getting jobs in the NFL? Tim Boyle, who did you do favors for? Man, I don't understand. And can you point me where? Because I would do them too. How do I get a job like Tim Boyle in the NFL, playing like absolute garbage and still being allowed into NFL buildings? I would give anything to be. Maybe we should make fun of him. Maybe he's a legend. Maybe Tim Boyle he's got to have the worst touchdown to interception ratio in history of any backup horrible NFL player, right? Between college and the pros, it's insanely bad. It's like probably 1 touchdown for every 5 interceptions. It's like literally that bad. Maybe every 4. Is he the most amazing salesman ever? How is Tim Boyle still being invited into NFL locker rooms? I have no idea. I don't know what he's done to prove himself. In fact, he's done everything but prove himself, in my opinion, based on how bad he was in college and the pros. But Tim Boyle's still around, now in the practice squad in Houston. In the AFC South right now, here's what's going on. The Jaguars technically lead the division at 8-6. Right behind them, same record, 8-6, you got Indy. And then the Houston Texans are 8-6 as well. 3 teams all neck and neck. I think this is the future of the AFC South. Tennessee's been eliminated, but they didn't have Will Levis as a starting quarterback all year. I think the future of the AFC South between Jacksonville, Indy, Houston, and Tennessee, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Trevor Lawrence, man, the future is going to be really exciting and fun as these 4 teams for years to come are going to be battling for their division title. And, oh man, it makes me happy. It reminds me actually, remember there was a brief period in the NFC South where you had Cam Newton, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, and then Tampa never had a quarterback. But there was a period where the NFC South was really good. Now they're awful. The AFC South is now really good with Jacksonville, Indy, Houston, and Tennessee. And man, young quarterbacks playing well, and I have no idea who's going to win that division. I keep thinking Jacksonville's going to run away with it, and Jacksonville keeps fumbling the bag every week. I don't know, man. It's really interesting. The Saints beat the Giants 24-6 on Sunday. Tommy touchdown lost. He left the game briefly, had a concussion scare. Tommy touchdown. Tommy DeVito, the Italian stallion, the Italian mobster quarterback in the NFL who we love. I don't know, man. He didn't play great. They lost. Is that the end of Tommy DeVito? No, he's going to play again, I'm sure, but it's his run over. He won 3 in a row. It was fun. How long is his 15 minutes of fame going to last? I'm not really sure. I mean that with absolute respect to Tommy DeVito. But the Saints beat the stuffing out of the Giants 24-6, and it felt like the end of Tommy touchdown as we know it. Now, the NFC South is really interesting. The NFC South right now, Tampa leads the division with a really impressive record of 7-7. Ooh, Tampa's so good. The Saints are right behind him, also at 7-7, but with more losses in the division. The Falcons are 6-8, and the Carolina Panthers have been eliminated for a long time. They're 2-12. So Atlanta is 1 game behind New Orleans and Tampa. I really, really want to see Tampa win the NFC South because remember, I want New Orleans to fire their coach. I want Atlanta to fire their coach. I want changes to be made in New Orleans and Atlanta. If either team wins that division, they might feel safe enough to just keep things as they are. We do not want that in either Atlanta or New Orleans. Tampa just beat Green Bay 34-20 on Sunday. And Baker Mayfield had himself a day. Baker Mayfield is 22 for 28 passing and 381 yards and 4 touchdown passes. Man, Baker showed up and it really mattered. And right now, Tampa is in the driver's seat. If they win out, they win their division. All Tampa's got to do is keep winning. Now, they can win only 2 games and have New Orleans just be awful and Atlanta be awful. But I like that Tampa's got control of their own destiny. They got Baker Mayfield. Things are working out the way I want them to. I really want Tampa to win the NFC South because, again, I think that's the best thing for the other teams around them. You don't want Arthur Smith coming back to Atlanta next year. You don't want Dennis Allen still coaching in New Orleans next year. The final 3 games of the year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are Jacksonville, Christmas Eve, then the Saints on New Year's Eve, and then Carolina, January 7th at Carolina. You play Jacksonville at home, you play New Orleans at home, then you play at Carolina. 3 winnable games. Baker Mayfield, by the way, playing his best football at the end of the year. I am so excited to see what Baker Mayfield does in these final 3 games of the year, how he plays. The guy who was discarded by Cleveland. Cleveland didn't want him. They replaced him with the guy who touches everybody and does horrible stuff that we don't like. I don't know if I said that the right way to put that, but it is what it is. I'm so rooting for Baker. If Baker wins his division with another team, oh, that'd be so cool. And the guy who Cleveland didn't want doing well makes me happy. Atlanta lost to Carolina 9-7. Of course, Atlanta lost to Carolina. Carolina's awful, by the way, and still beat Atlanta. They won to the last-second field goal on the final play of the game. And shout out to everyone doubts Bryce Young. Bryce Young is a young quarterback, number 1 overall pick in Carolina. The team around him is awful. The coaching was awful. And Bryce Young continues to play. We should do a film analysis. I should write that down. Bryce Young. I've got my list because it's film analysis during the season is really tough because it's just always Bryce Young. You know, we should put all the rookie quarterbacks, CJ Stroud and Will Levis. Rookie quarterbacks are always good film analysis videos. I think really interesting, but Bryce Young has played so much better than the record in Carolina would indicate. And I thought the final 7 minutes of this game in Carolina, the final drive you put together to win the game and kick a field goal to win in the last second. If you haven't seen it, if you have a way to go back and watch games, I do. I've got the pass. You can watch every game. If you can find a way to go watch a Carolina game, watch the final drive for the Carolina Panthers as they beat Atlanta in the fourth quarter on the final play, 4th and 5 with the field goal to win. that drive was incredible and makes me go, yeah, Bryce Young's going to be fine. Get him a good coach, get him some weapons. He's got a lot of good stuff ahead of him in his career and his future, and I feel totally fine about Bryce Young. Let's talk about college football. A couple things happened that I think are worth talking about. First of all, let me just Google it because it is 8 o'clock Hawaii time, meaning it's past midnight on the East Coast. Cam Ward. We still, as far as I know, we still do not have a destination for Cameron Ward. I would imagine that the rumors are, the destinations for Cameron Ward are Florida State or Ohio State. I have heard Cameron Ward said I want a couple million to go to Ohio State, and Ohio State laughed at him. That's the rumor going around. I want Cameron Ward to go to Ohio State because I think that's got the best opportunity for him to go be an NFL quarterback somewhere. But also, I wanted to make $2 million. That'd be great. And if Florida State can do that, go to Florida State. But does Florida State help Cameron Ward become a better NFL quarterback? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. And that's uncomfortable to me. I don't know what to make of that. But we still don't know where the number one most coveted college football recruit in the transfer portal, Cameron Ward, is going. We do know where, how do I even say this? We know Oregon is getting two really exciting quarterbacks. They're getting Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback from Oklahoma, transferring in. They're also getting Dante Moore, who played as a true freshman at UCLA. I would imagine the plan is for Dante Moore to come, sit behind Dylan Gabriel, be ready if anything happens, but maybe redshirt if you're not going to get any playing time. Sit behind Dylan Gabriel, learn, be ready, and then when Dylan Gabriel goes to the NFL after 1 year at Oregon, got 1 year left of eligibility, Dante Moore steps in, is really talented, has a great year, and becomes the, for lack of a better term, franchise quarterback at Oregon. Oregon solidified their quarterback future in the transfer portal with Dylan Gabriel for next year, and then Dante Moore for the future. What an awesome... Oregon is killing it right now. Oregon... I'm excited to watch. I'm about to go back to Oregon to live in Oregon. I am really excited to watch Oregon football games in Oregon, and they're going to be Big Ten games. I am going to get to watch Big Ten football live in my home state on the West Coast. That is going to be... Do we have the Oregon football schedule? Do we have it? I think it's out. Let's find out. Oregon's football schedule for next year. I hate the way Google does this. Football schedule 2024. The Oregon football schedule for 2024, they are going to play Hawaii here in Hawaii, August 24th. Then Idaho and Eugene, Boise State, Oregon State, then UCLA. Here are the games I might be able to go to. They play, I'm sure I can't afford a ticket to this game, but on October 12th, Saturday, October 12th, they play Ohio State in Eugene, Oregon. Oh, man, that's going to be awesome. Also coming to Eugene, Oregon is Washington on November 30th. They play Michigan in Ann Arbor. Someday I'll get to watch Michigan play Oregon at Oregon. I might go to Oregon State, Oregon in Corvallis because I like Corvallis. It's a fun town. I don't know, man. I'm really excited to watch Oregon football. I went to Washington State. I've always hated the Ducks. But I don't care anymore, and I want to just buy blue. Blue's my favorite color. Sorry, green's my favorite color. I said blue, what the heck? I want to buy green Duck shirts and just be like, I'm a Ducks fan. I don't care. I'm going to the games. I'm going to get drunk and have fun and watch Big Ten football. That sounds awesome. I'm going to do that, and I think that's going to be a good time. Will Rogers is going to Washington. Will Rogers, a former Mississippi State quarterback who put up massive numbers. He's a quarterback who's really talented, and I think it's a great fit, for Will Rogers to go from Mississippi State. Remember, he once played for Mike Leach, and Mike Leach passed on to the quarterback heaven. And so he didn't have a coach this year. I'm really interested to see what Will Rogers can do playing for a really good staff in a really cool offense at Washington. They might go from Michael Penix Jr. to another guy who can do very similar stuff with Will Rogers. That's a really exciting, interesting move. Kyle McCord, the former Ohio State quarterback, has committed to transferring to Syracuse, which, remember when I said Kyle McCord should really enjoy the moment as the man at Ohio State? I said, look, I don't know how long it's going to last for him. He's not an NFL quarterback. He should just enjoy the opportunity he has to be the starting quarterback of Ohio State. He's transferring out. He's leaving. And that came and went way faster than I thought. Now, they're playing a bowl game against Missouri. Is Kyle McCord going to play in the bowl game? I should Google it. I have no idea. Kyle McCord bowl game. Is he going to play? So I don't know that. I don't know what you would do here because you're committed to Syracuse, but are you going to play your final game with Ohio State? Does he actually get a chance to even enjoy being the man one more time at Ohio State? I'm not sure. I'm fascinated by that. And I am not able to find the information. Is he, when the game happens, I'll tell you, obviously. I don't know if Kyle McCord's going to play against Missouri in the bowl game for Ohio State, but aren't bowl games like lame now, by the way? Basically, if you're not in a playoff game, your quarterback isn't going to play, and all your best players are not going to play the bowl game. Bowl games are meaningless now. I can't wait to expand the college football playoffs. We have more meaningful games this time of year in college football. By the way, I got blasted on Jazz Cabbage this week, and one of my notes I wrote down, because every time I get in a different altered state, I write a lot. Usually it's sad, depressing personal growth stuff. This time was about football, and I wrote, college football is so much more exciting than NFL football, and I agree. Like, the crowds at a high-level college football game are so much more exciting than, like, Monday Night Football. And I realized, too, by the way, if Michigan wins their playoff game against Alabama, we're guaranteed a national title rematch next year because Michigan plays Texas and Washington next year. College football is amazing. I love it. I'm so excited for next year. I got to add a note here. Carson Beck, the quarterback at Georgia, put out a little statement saying, hey, I'm foregoing the NFL draft. I'm going to stay in college. And I went, pardon my French, no shit, Sherlock. You're not going to the NFL. We don't need, I know every quarterback has PR and marketing and the transfer portal and all this NIL stuff, but we know you're not going to the NFL, Carson Beck. You're not really an NFL prospect. Like, you're not, no one's viewing you as a first round pick. What, of course. And Carson Beck's not even the worst one. There's some other quarterback who's very average. Like Carson Beck did some really good stuff. I don't mean no disrespect, but a quarterback who I was really more offended by the other quarterback that I don't remember the name of right now. Some like average level quarterback in the NFL said, yeah, I'm going to stay in college. And I went, of course you are. What kind of lack of self-awareness do you have where you're announcing to the world, hey, I'm not going to the NFL? And everyone in the NFL is like, we didn't think you were coming. The audacity of these guys to say, like, I passed on the NFL this year. It's like, did you? Or did they pass on you? I don't know, man. You don't need an announcement for everything, Carson Beck. And it wasn't even Carson Beck. Let me Google this. There was some guy staying in college. QB staying in college. Some guy announced this the other day, and I was like, man, what? I don't see it, man. It was, you know who it was? It was Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe, the Alabama quarterback, said, I'm coming back for next year at Alabama. And I said, yeah, of course you are. You're not an NFL player yet. You might be next year. You got a lot of growing to do. No one looked at Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama. That's the one that started this thing that really bothered me. Jalen Milroe did it, then Carson Beck did it, and I said, neither one of you are first-round picks. No one viewed you as a top NFL prospect at the quarterback position. Of course you're not going to the NFL. But they make it seem like, oh, we decided we're going to stay. Did you? Or again, did the NFL make it clear you're not really on our radar right now? I don't know. One more thing in college football, quarterback news. We should have called the segment quarterback news. I didn't realize till I did it what it was going to be about. Dylan Raiola, the number one quarterback recruit in the country, high school football player right now, going to college, been committed to Georgia ever since I've known about his existence. He flipped his commitment from Georgia to Nebraska. So Dylan Raiola, the number one quarterback in the country, is going to Nebraska instead of Georgia. Why? I have a theory. Why. What did Matt Rhule, the Nebraska head coach, tell us about Or sorry, what? Well, first of all, he told us that a transfer portal quarterback is about $2 million. But I wonder what Matt Rhule told Dylan Raiola. Here's what I would imagine the sales pitch was. Hey, you can go to Georgia and sit behind Carson Beck next year, or come to Nebraska. Be a week 1 starter as a freshman. You want to play as a freshman, Dylan Raiola? Because guess what? You can always transfer out of Nebraska, buddy. You can come play here for a year, do great, and then leave. Because that's the new world of college football. And you can go to a lot of high-level college football programs. Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Georgia. There are so many college football programs you can go be a backup next year. Michigan, if you want. But you know the more rare opportunity than going to Georgia, being a backup? Being a starter as a true freshman at Nebraska. Show the world what you can do and then transfer. Hey, let's be honest about this. Dylan, we're not going to win a national title here in Nebraska. Me, Matt Rhule, not going to happen next couple of years. But you come here, you do the more rare thing, you play as a true freshman, you get better as a quarterback, then you transfer to a different program, make a couple million, you can go to Georgia next year. You want to go to Georgia? Do it. Just wait a year. Come play for me for a year, get experience, then go to Georgia. I really wonder how honest they were with that, because I don't expect Dylan Raiola turns out to be a really, really high-level NFL quarterback at Nebraska. If he's really good, he's not going to stay there. And Matt Rhule has to know that. But maybe the pitch was, we don't expect you to stay. Come here for a year or two, play as a true freshman. Then next year, after 1 year with us, if you still want to go to Georgia, you totally can. But we're one of the only places in the country where Dylan Raiola can go, Nebraska's saying this, where Dylan Raiola, you can come here and be a starter as a true freshman in college. Not everyone's going to offer that to Dylan Raiola. And maybe that's what the offer was. Maybe we'll see a true freshman quarterback next year starting at Nebraska. And maybe that promise was made to get him to go there. That's fascinating to me. I find that really, really interesting. All right, we got a lot of questions from Patreon we got to talk about today. Although I am noticing we haven't talked about there's another important segment of the show we got to do. Let's talk about next week. Christmas weekend is here, and in many ways. So if Thursday Night Football is going to be really fun. Like, genuinely, it's going to be a fun game, I think. I mean, they're always like, every Thursday night game is always absurd and weird. You have got like awful performances or Patriots, Steelers who are supposed to be bad, then it's a good game. Last week we had the Raiders scoring 63 points on the Chargers, getting Brandon Staley fired. This week you got a treat. The Rams are going to play on Thursday Night Football. They're playing the Saints. Both teams are 7-7, fighting for a playoff spot. It's a great game with playoff implications, and the Rams are fun, man. The LA Rams are a really awesome team to watch. I can't recommend. This Thursday night, go watch football. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. I cannot wait for it. On Saturday, December 23rd, the Bengals play Pittsburgh. At Pittsburgh, by the way. The Bengals have a tough final 3 games of the year. This is the beginning. The Bengals play, I believe, let's see. They play at Pittsburgh, then they play at Kansas City. I talked about this earlier. Then they play Cleveland. And I'm looking at my notes. That does confirm that. So the Bengals are an 8-6 football team trying to make a playoff game with a backup quarterback, Jake Browning. Their tough road to a playoff game starts Saturday in a tough environment at Pittsburgh. Great game. Really fun to watch. Buffalo is playing the Chargers on Saturday. Man, if you told me in August this game was going to be awful, I would not believe it. I would have thought Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much fun. Instead, Justin Herbert's out for the year. Brandon Staley's been fired. I expect Buffalo to win by a lot, but I am also curious. Anytime you fire a coach, usually there's an emotional boost for the team that fired their coach. What are the Chargers going to look like on Saturday hosting Buffalo? I have no idea. I'm fascinated. We'll see, man. It's going to be really interesting. On Sunday, Christmas Eve, we've got a really interesting game. Interesting because Houston may not have their quarterback, C.J. Stroud. The Browns are 9-5, trying to go 10-5, playing on the road at Houston, who may not have their starting quarterback. So it might be Cleveland against Case Keenum. Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, I'm in. That sounds like actually a good time. Joe Flacco is a really cool story right now. I want to see the Browns win this football game, especially if CJ Stroud isn't. If CJ Stroud does play, I've got no opinion. I want to just see a good game. If CJ Stroud doesn't play, then I want to see the Browns win and try to go get a a playoff appearance and maybe win a Super Bowl. And I'll be watching and paying a lot of attention to this game. It'll be really fun. The Colts play the Falcons on Sunday. I want the Colts to win. Gardner Minshew, baby. I hate Arthur Smith, the coach of Atlanta. Get him out of there. I want the Colts to beat Atlanta badly on Sunday. Seattle plays Tennessee, which Tennessee's been eliminated. They're 5-9. Seattle 7-7, fighting for a playoff spot. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback in Seattle, Drew Lock or Geno Smith. Geno Smith was healthy and he didn't play on Monday Night Football. I don't know what that means. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be on Monday night, but nonetheless, it's interesting. And Will Levis is actually a fun young quarterback in Tennessee, so we might get Drew Lock, Will Levis. We might get Will Levis, Geno Smith. I have no idea, but it's actually like an interesting game here if you like quarterback play. Will Levis is such a fun quarterback to watch for the Tennessee Titans. A rookie kid who is physical, plays with his heart. I love the guy. That's going to be interesting. Detroit plays at Minnesota. Detroit is 10-4. Minnesota is 7-7. Detroit should win this game comfortably. Minnesota's got Nick Mullins at quarterback. And the Lions, I believe, play Minnesota twice in the next 3 games. So I think Detroit's a way better football team. They're playing at Minnesota, which I guess is a tough environment, but I think Detroit wins this game handily on Sunday at Minnesota, and we'll see if I'm right come this weekend. Here's an awful game you shouldn't watch. Washington plays the Jets at New York. At this point, the Jets are just trying to keep their, trying to find out if their coach is going to be there next year, I think, honestly. And it really matters if Aaron Rodgers wants to play for Robert Saleh. I think that really does matter too. Does he want to work with Nathaniel Hackett and Robert Saleh? The most powerful person probably in the NFL right now is actually Aaron Rodgers because he controls the fates of a lot of people. If Aaron Rodgers says, I'm not coming back without Robert Saleh, they're bringing back Robert Saleh. If he says, I'm not going to come play for the Jets next year if you don't have Nathaniel Hackett coaching the offensive side of the football, they're going to keep Nathaniel Hackett. If he says, I want Zach Wilson there, Zach Wilson's going to be there. So, but regardless, Jets Commanders, don't watch on, don't waste good time you could spend with your family on Christmas Eve watching the Jets play. Okay, come on, guys. Green Bay plays Carolina. These are 2 teams with a losing record, but 2 young quarterbacks that are interesting, Jordan Love and Bryce Young. Jordan Love, I thought, played pretty well this past weekend, actually. He had a fumble that sucked, but 2 touchdowns, had like 10 incomplete passes. I thought played pretty good. Jordan Love progressing and getting better. I want to see 2 young quarterbacks play against each other and see what happens. I think it's actually an interesting game this weekend between Green Bay and Carolina. The Jaguars play at Tampa. This one has massive playoff implications. Both teams in the South. The Jaguars lead the AFC South. Tampa leads the NFC South. And they're both first in their division. The winner is going to have an even better opportunity and a better standing, basically, to maintain their spot at the top of their division. So I'm personally rooting for Baker Mayfield here. I don't really know what that means. Does that mean Tampa wins? I hope so. But I want to see Baker Mayfield play really, really well, hosting the Jaguars on Sunday. The Cardinals play Chicago. I mean, actually, look, both teams are awful. Good quarterback matchup, though. Kyler Murray and Justin Fields. Actually, that's a fun match. That might be a terrible game as far as playoff implications and storylines, but if you want to just sit down and watch 2 quarterbacks who are really athletic and can do some really rare stuff, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, Arizona against Chicago in Chicago this weekend. Actually, a really compelling, interesting game that you might want to watch that. Actually, I can't believe I'm saying that. I feel like I've said actually 20 times, but despite Arizona being 3-11 and the Bears having only 5 wins, I kind of want to watch that game. Actually. Sorry, ASMR. Actually. The Dallas Cowboys play at Miami on Sunday, Christmas Eve. What a game, dude. This one's fascinating. The Cowboys have had some really embarrassing, awful losses. One to Buffalo and one to the 49ers. The Dolphins have won 10 games against nobody, basically. They got embarrassed by Buffalo badly. They lost by 28 points. And then they lost to Kansas City. They lost to Philly by a couple touchdowns. They lost to Tennessee horribly at the end of the game. Miami and Dallas are both teams that I feel very suspect about. I'm like, I think you're contenders. I hope, I guess. But you've got some really bad, really ugly losses. And it's fitting these two teams play each other in Miami, Christmas Eve. And I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's actually going to be a great game, probably. I'm surprised it's not Sunday Night Football technically, but probably better. It's earlier in the day. So if you're doing Christmas Eve stuff, you can still watch football, then go to your Christmas Eve event. So probably best game of the weekend, Dolphins Cowboys. Then Sunday Night Football. Can I just be honest here? If you have anyone in your life you care about, do not watch this football game. Go spend time with your girlfriend, your dad, your mom, your friends, anyone with a pulse, rather than watching the Patriots play at Denver. If you got nothing else going on, you know what? I'm going to be watching this game because I got nothing else going on. I live alone in Hawaii. But if you have anyone you care about, you should go hang out with them instead of watching the Patriots play at Denver. Check the score afterward. We're all hoping Denver wins because we want to see Denver make a playoff push. Denver winning is more interesting for the playoff implications. So, spend time with your family on Christmas Eve. Don't watch Patriots Broncos. No one needs to watch the Patriots instead of hanging out with your family. Although to y'all who are lonely and also alone and maybe have no one, you don't have a great family, I encourage you, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, I encourage you, go make family that isn't blood related to you because doing life alone sucks. Don't do it. Love you guys. On Monday, Christmas morning, we get the Raiders playing Kansas City, which Kansas City's probably going to win. It's in Kansas City. But I like Antonio Pierce, the Raiders head coach. They're 6-8. They're coming off a game where they scored 63 points. I don't know. Interesting there. Horrible game on Christmas is Giants-Eagles. Like, Philly's coming off of a bad loss on Monday night. The Giants are 5-9. Philly is going to curb stomp the Giants on Christmas Day. And then Monday Night Football, man. Game on ABC and ESPN. Christmas Day. A Christmas miracle, might you say. The NFL's gift to all of us is the two best teams in football. The 11-3 Baltimore Ravens playing at the 11-3 49ers. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait. This is going to be the highlight of Christmas for sure. Monday, December 25th. Ravens at 49ers. And man, you guys, this is going to be absolutely awesome. And if it's not a good game, you better check on me on Tuesday because I'll be really sad. I'll be like, man, I can't believe how awful that was. And make sure I'm doing okay because I need this to be a great game. I really want a good thing on Christmas to be Ravens 49ers. So, man, rooting for that on Christmas. Guys, that's all no. I went to say that's all I have for this segment, but I realized it made it sound like I'm going to end the show. I'm not going to end the show. We've got one more segment left. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/Zach Schaumler, patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. It's $1 a month. You can donate more if you want to. Please do. Your donations literally pay my rent, and I very much appreciate it. Patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. It allows you to submit questions on Patreon. Now, here's our deal. I do not guarantee to read your question on the show, but I look at every single write-in with my eyeballs, and I read as many as I can. I read most of them. I'm thinking about adding a tier on Patreon, like a $20 tier, where like I guarantee to read what you write in. That would be interesting. Like, you can make me say heinous, horrible things. That'd be kind of fun. And I'll be like, I gotta say it. He paid $20. I gotta say the thing. Gotta read it. I think that would be like a fun relationship with the audience, but I don't know, man. Let's go today. I want to start with Joe did his best to write in with like an unhinged question. I'm not sure if it worked, but let's read what Joe wrote in if I can find it. Joe says, "Hey, Zach, I'm going to give you a football question and a non-football question. And I'm going to tell you now, Joe, I'm not going to answer your football question because I already talked about it. I already talked about the Chargers. Here's his non-football question. He says, I sincerely hope these questions appease thy mighty balls of vision. My eyes are balls of vision, apparently, which kind of makes sense. Non-football. You have a microphone in front of you that is an intercom system that can reach out to every individual person on the planet, meaning what you say into the microphone would be heard by every human being on Earth. If you had 5 seconds to say something into the microphone, what would you say? I don't know what I would say. I would want it to be positive. Like, I'd want to say something like that unites people and brings people together. I'm not sure that would work, though. In 5 seconds, you can't say anything really meaningful. I could say, like, I miss my ex, I'm sad. But I think that would also not do anything positive. Like, Joe, I just have a problem with your question. In 5 seconds, you can't say anything meaningful. So what's the point? What would I say? Like, I would probably say, like, I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't want to waste the opportunity of making a joke, right? But what can I possibly say in 5 seconds that is positive for the entire planet to hear? I have no idea. Maybe just, hey, I'm Zach Schaumler. Look me up on Instagram. That's probably the only beneficial thing I can do. And then the entire planet would be like, who's Zach Schaumler? They'd research me and I'd make a bunch of money on YouTube. Probably, actually. That's like the only good thing I could do from this. Like, I don't think I could say, like, be nice to each other, world peace. And I think that would work. I think the only thing you can do, I would probably sell it, actually. I'd be like, hey, who's got an ad they want me to read? For like $10 million, I'll say the name of your company into this intercom for 5 seconds. That's like actually the only thing you can do in 5 seconds is raise awareness of something. You can't actually like send a good message. So, Joe, I like the thought. It's a bit unhinged, I guess. You did your best. But, Joe, in the end, I learned that you can't really do anything in 5 seconds that is meaningful. And what's the point of talking to the whole world if you don't have anything meaningful to say? Lionheart writes in. Lionheart says, hey, Zach, I'm going to use this right into rant. Please do, Lionheart. Let's hear it. Lionheart says, Jake Browning is playing very well for the Bengals, and there are murmurings of Joe Burrow being a, quote, system quarterback. I hate this not only because it's not true, but also because it discredits everything Jake Browning is doing. I'll admit that most quarterbacks could find a way to look passable when throwing to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, but Jake Browning has exceeded all expectations. The last pass on 3rd and 9 in overtime to set up the game-winning field goal is not something that a system quarterback could do. Jake Browning was cut by the Vikings in 2021. The narrative should be Jake Browning just made the game-winning play against the team that cut him in overtime, not, is Joe Burrow a system quarterback? Also, there is an annoying level of cognitive dissonance about it when people hate on the Ravens and Chiefs for not getting more weapons, but they hate on Joe Burrow because the team actually has drafted some good weapons around him. I hate the system quarterback thing. I always have. I think people just need stuff to argue about. They're like, let's discredit this guy. We need to I think the worst part about the sports media is that people are always finding dumb things to argue about that don't actually matter. How about enjoying what's happening, right? Enjoying Baker Mayfield throwing 4 touchdowns. Enjoying that Matthew Stafford made an incredible play against Washington. You're like, that's an insane throw. Enjoying the fact that we might get Joe Flacco playing the Ravens in a playoff game. Enjoying the fact that we get Ravens 49ers on Christmas Eve, like Christmas Day. The night of Christmas, we get the two best teams in football playing each other. Thank you, NFL, for the gift. I appreciate it. How about we appreciate the good things in front of us in football rather than being like, is Joe Burrow really that good? Because this Jake Browning guy is coming in and doing really good without Joe Burrow, so maybe Joe Burrow's overrated. Why do we need to, you can ask the question, I guess, if you want. Ask whatever you want. But, is that your thing you want to focus on? Is how can I tear down a different person? Rather than, hey, look at this awesome guy, Jake Browning, doing incredible stuff that no one saw coming. That's way more powerful to me. So, I don't know. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last year of my life is like, I need to focus more on the good stuff and the positive stuff and be grateful and appreciate the good things happening rather than just being like, who can we tear down today? Who sucks? Who's doing something wrong right now? Nah, well, let's just focus on the good. And I don't have any, I agree with you, Lionheart. The Jake Browning doing well leading to Joe Burrow getting criticized is such a weird logic line that it just, you can do it. I understand why people think that. That's just not a fun way to look at the world. And so why would you? Oh man. Lucas writes in with something that I don't know the names of most of these people, so I'm going to butcher the names, but I'm going to read what I know and tell you what I know about who I know. Lucas says, out of the new head coaches for Power 5 teams, which fits do you like best and which ones are you most wary of? Here's a list for your ease. So Duke hired Manny Diaz. Houston hired Willie Fritz. Indiana hired Curtis Signetti. Michigan State hired Jonathan Smith. Mississippi State hired Jeff Lebby. Oregon State hired Trent Bray. Syracuse hired Fran Brown. And Texas A&M hired Mike Elko. He says, I really love the Syracuse and Houston hires, but I feel like Texas A&M's hiring process was really messy. The fact that Texas A&M spent a ton of money to fire Jimbo Fisher and then hired Mike Elko from Duke is kind of weird. I'm like, okay. Like, that's the incredible coach. Like, Texas A&M has so much money and they just hire like Mike Elko. No, nothing against Mike Elko. He's great. But you can't poach like a great coach from somewhere. You have all the money. You're not going to try to steal Jim Harbaugh or, I don't know. Like, I expected a bigger name at Texas A&M. I'm not going to lie. That surprises me. What I will say, Mike Elko did a great job at Duke, and I'm rooting for him. I really would love to see him do well. I thought my expectations for who Texas A&M is going to hire, I guess, was unrealistic because I thought they were going to get a big name that was like a massive splash in college football, which I guess is what they did with Jimbo Fisher, and that didn't work. So I don't know, but I will say I thought A&M with all their money was going to do a little more than Mike Elko. And I don't know. Nothing against Mike Elko, though. I'm rooting for him. And I think A&M, there's so much money there. You think they could turn it into wins. And the fact that they haven't is wild to me about Texas A&M. The name you mentioned, you said you liked him too. Fran Brown at Syracuse, dude. Fran Brown, if you haven't seen the conversation he had when Kyle McCord is going to Syracuse to play for Fran Brown. Fran Brown was a coach at Georgia. He's a defensive backs coach at Georgia. Won a national title last year, had a great year. He seems like such a genuine, honest, really cool coach. Fran Brown, go watch his introductory press conference. The way he talks with passion and with enthusiasm and honesty, I just love the guy. I don't know if he's going to be a great coach or not. But, man, I like him. I'd go play for him. I don't know. Syracuse has not a lot going on. And I don't think he views Syracuse as a stepping stone. I think he views Syracuse as a destination, which is really interesting. So, Fran Brown, new coach at Syracuse. It's the first time Syracuse has been on my radar, basically, ever. And I think that's really cool and interesting. The rest of the coaches you mentioned, I don't have much to say about him. But Fran Brown, I love. Mike Elko, I like. I just thought they were going to hire a bigger name at Texas A&M. Jasper writes in and says, hey, Zach-alicious. I know you have worked in the media before. What's your take on how honest, quote-unquote honest, Amazon was on Thursday Night Football last night with just blatantly talking about chargering, talking about Brandon Staley going and needing to be fired? From my memory and perception, it seems like those are a little too sensitive for live broadcasting and the kind of topics that have been saved for hot take shows like Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. Do you think this is a clear sign that Amazon is trying to be the anti-ESPN? I bet they came into this game ready with stuff after what they learned from that Colts-Broncos game last year. On another note, can we please have at least a large segment or a whole episode dedicated to backup quarterbacks who got a chance this year after the season ends? I really think there are a ton of things to talk about. Like, how did we get here, and why were there so many injuries? Who's got a lasting chance, and what did you see, etc. You're right. There is definitely room to make content about backup quarterbacks a lot this offseason, and we should. That'll be fun. Let's do it. Anti-ESPN. Do you mean like, so when you say, is Amazon trying to be anti-ESPN, you mean, are they trying to have conversations that ESPN doesn't have on live shows? Maybe. I think Amazon is just doing what sports media is doing in general, which is more inflammatory, more blamey, more provocative. What I will say is the things I don't watch, like broadcasting. I don't care anymore, but the clips I've seen of Amazon and their stuff is actually entertaining and actually good. They got Richard Sherman. They've got Andrew, why am I forgetting his name? Andrew Thomas, I believe, the left tackle from the Rams and Bengals. They've got Ryan Fitzpatrick. I like their group of people they've got broadcasting for Amazon these Thursday night games. They do good work. I get the sense that they're authentic and honest, and I think everyone who watched that Thursday night game, watching the Raiders beat the Chargers 63-21, everyone thought, you got to fire Brandon Staley. Let's be clear. Whether that's a sensitive, provocative topic or not, I don't know. But you have to acknowledge it. Like, if you are broadcasting on Thursday Night Football after that loss, you have to say that. You can't. To ignore the idea of Brandon Staley getting fired is like ignoring an elephant in your apartment. Right? We always say elephant in the room, but we kind of pass over what that really means. If you walked into your apartment tomorrow and were like, there's an elephant in my living room, its head is sticking through the ceiling, what the fuck? You'd have to talk about it. You wouldn't just walk away from it. If you saw a team whose coach is massively underachieving, who's 5-8, get blown out 63-21, you can't ignore the massive thing, which is like, hey, that guy's got to get fired, right? You can't not talk about it. So I've got no problem with the way they broadcasted on Thursday Night Football. I don't think it was an out-of-bounds topic at all. And I think that's good work. I appreciate the question, Jasper, and the conversation's a good one. But again, if you walked into your living room and there was a fucking elephant, you'd be like, what? We should talk about that, right? I'm not going to just walk by the elephant whose poops are massive sitting there. We got to talk about the thing, man. How did this happen? So, I think you got to acknowledge the crazy, insane things that happen right in front of you, and this is definitely one of them. My favorite thing I said on today's show so far is that thing about appreciating the moment. I think I'm going through a phase of growing up. I'm 26. I'm about to have what I think is going to be like my real permanent job and career. And I think I'm finally like getting to a place in life where I can like settle and stay in one place for a long time. And that is an exciting feeling. And I feel, given the things that have happened to me since I graduated high school 8 years ago, all of the YouTube success and then failure and then almost getting married and then moving to Hawaii, not once, but twice, and doing a road trip across the country and working for ESPN and all of the weird experiences that have happened to me in my life have really been me trying to get over my trauma, I think, honestly. But I think I feel equipped now finally to be a real adult. And like, I've got all of the stuff in my tool belt now to be like, I can handle all the things that are going to come my way as an adult. And I'm sorry it took me so long, but I do feel like I'm finally getting my act together. And that is an exciting feeling, even if it's a little later than I would have liked. Justin writes in. Justin says, I'm going to get right to it. You get $1 million. And then it says, I'll add to this, I'll boost the money to $1 billion. For $1 billion. But every morning you wake up as a dry, shriveled up piece of beef jerky looking thing. In order to turn back into yourself for the day, you have to hydrate yourself by getting wet. The issue is Zach Jerky can't move because he's so dry and shriveled up. So how would you hydrate yourself? Would you take the $1 billion? For $1 million? No, probably not. Because I don't trust people, and you would have to trust someone every day to hydrate you. I guess you could like live in the woods in the rain in like Hawaii, but then you can't live the life you want to live. So I don't know, man. I don't. Nah, I'm good. Pass. I don't want to be beef jerky every morning. Sounds awful. I'm good. Don't need to do that at all. Florida Man writes in. Florida Man says, "Hey Zach, after hearing the latest episode, I love the idea of Joe Flacco winning a Super Bowl with the Browns. If this actually happens, would Joe Flacco make the Hall of Fame? 2 Super Bowls is basically the same primary criteria that is used for arguments like for Eli Manning to make the Hall of Fame. So it would be really interesting to see how things play out. So could Joe Flacco make a Hall of Fame spot if he wins a second Super Bowl? I don't know. He's not like an all-time great quarterback, so probably not. But that's an all-time great story. Joe Flacco coming out of nowhere, winning a Super Bowl with the Browns. His second Super Bowl on a new team, now a second team too. That would be really interesting. Hall of Fame? Probably not. Where does Joe Flacco rank? NFL records. NFL passing records. He played for a long time, but he didn't play that long. I don't think Joe Flacco's like the number 1 or even number top 10. Where does he rank? Joe Flacco, top 20 all-time in yards. More than I thought, actually. Okay. Like, interesting. Very interesting. So maybe Joe Flacco is... But Ryan Tannehill's 37 ever. So, like, maybe that's a bad metric. I don't know. Like, is Kirk Cousins a Hall of Famer because he's number 24 ever in passing yards? No. So, yeah, I don't know. Joe Flacco, he's not a Hall of Famer to me, no matter what happens here. But I want to see him win a Super Bowl. That would be very cool. There's another part of this. I want to read it. It might be good. It might not. I'm not sure. But Florida Man says, here's another question. If you lived in a life-size gingerbread house in a remote wintry location, how long do you think you could survive both the elements and the hunger by eating the house? Let's call it a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,500 square foot garden, gumdrops optional. What is this question? How long could I survive in the cold? First of all, gingerbread house would not be well insulated, I don't think. And the snow would break it down pretty quickly. Not to mention, animals would be eating your house. You're sharing your food with animals. This is all bad. How long could I live? I could do it for like a couple days probably. And then it'd be like, hey, the rats and the wolves and the cold and all of it are killing me. And I could do it for a night for sure. One night in the gingerbread house, definitely could do it. Day number 3, I'd be like, this is crusty, man. I don't want to eat this house. And also, it's cold. So, no, I don't think I can do it for very long. Interesting question, but Colin writes in and says, Zach, just want to preface this by saying that this is all in good fun. But I heard you mention that if you could be any dinosaur, you'd want to be a pterodactyl so you can fly around like a bird. I have good news and bad news. Bad news is a pterodactyl actually is not a dinosaur, but they belong to a related group. The good news is birds are dinosaurs, so you could like just do that. What? So pterodactyl, the thing I've always wondered about dinosaurs, we know feathers cannot be fossilized. The theory is dinosaurs would have lots of feathers. Like a T-Rex probably had lots of feathers on him. Probably. We think. We don't know because we weren't there. Can someone invent time travel, please? I want to go back. I want to see. There's the ways I would use time travel. Oh man. The things I would change in my own life, let alone to go back and see dinosaurs. I mean, that endless content in my brain. Like I love to write about stuff as like exercise. I said like, what would I do if I could time travel? I would probably write like 30 pages of things I would do if I could time travel. That would be such a fun exercise. I got to do that next time. Probably tomorrow after work, hitting the Jazz Cabbage and going to do a lot of writing about what I would do with a time machine. That's a fun thought. And, oh man, I would do a lot of things. Anyway, pterodactyls are not dinosaurs. What? You're telling me Jurassic Park lied to me? Because those flying things are in Jurassic Park, and I always thought they were dinosaurs, and if they're not, does that mean they're dragons? What's a pterodactyl? I have so many questions. We're going to ignore them all in my head. Birds are dinosaurs, though. You can't just skip over that. So there are dinosaurs alive right now. They're just tiny. That's weird. Is it weird that all I have to say is that's weird? I don't know. Nick writes in, hey, Zackety Zach. Zackety Zach. I thought it said Zack City, but Zack City is Zackety. Was wondering what advice you would give to anyone who wants to start their own sports podcast. I'm sure you've answered something like this before, but I'd love one episode for you to go into how you make the podcast and what you need to start things up like that. I don't want to do it for money, but I think it would be fun to do with friends and have recordings to look back on when we're older. How do you start a podcast? You effing start it. You buy a SM, SM57 microphone? Yeah, you buy a Shure SM7B microphone. That's one that has the audio. It not only uses XLR cords, it also uses USB if you want for live streaming or whatever. Easy way to record into your computer so you can do podcasts with other people. So the SM57 is, sorry, the SM, let's be clear about this. The SM, nope, that's wrong. Let's make sure what's the right one I'm trying to recommend. The microphone I recommend, it's from Shure. It's probably just right here. I don't see it on my microphone. Whatever microphone I have is the one you should buy. SM7B. What is it called? Shure SM. Come on. MV7. The Shure MV7. That's the one I want. That's, by the way, what Travis Kelce and his brother use on their podcast for a long time. It's one I use. It's great. I think it sounds good. It's got a lot of it's got more function than other microphones, and it's a good price range. It's $250, which for a good microphone is cheap, actually. So the Shure MV7 is a microphone you should buy. Shure MV7. One more time. MV7. I said a lot of names. That's the one I mean. The Shure MV7. It can do not only USB recording, it can also do XLR, which if you don't know technology, I don't want to try to break it down and explain that, but it's good. You record with the Zencaster or Riverside, and you figure it out. And you start, and you'll get better as you go. I love the idea of having recordings always archived for your relatives to go back, and your kids to watch someday. Podcasts are tough, though. Podcasts are, I've done 623 of them. I'm still not rich. I'm still barely getting by. So, I don't know, man. What's my advice? Buy the microphone I said and start doing it and figure it out as you go. There's no blanket advice, really. You host it on, I use Megaphone to host Strong Opinion Sports because the company that gives me my ads said I got to be there. Megaphone is great. Another one is Libsyn. But you got to host your podcast somewhere to send it off to, podcast land. So Spotify and Apple Podcasts or whatever. So, thankfully I don't pay anymore because I'm part of a bigger company that pays for me. So I don't have to pay for podcast hosting. You would have to pay a fee to Megaphone monthly to host your podcast. So, that's my advice. And you can record with your friends very easily remotely with, Riverside or Zencaster. If you're recording in person with XLR cords, you should buy the Zoom P4. It's a audio interface, which, you know what I'm realizing? This should just be a YouTube video. I should just make a YouTube video about the equipment I use and how I use it and why. That's probably what I should do. So I'm going to end this segment here. Rhett writes in about Florida State, and I think we should, it's really long, but why not have the conversation? Rhett says, hey, Zach, I hope this has been a better week for you. This is a long, thorough comment, but I think it'll provide some good discussion fodder. After listening to your last episode's discussion on the Florida State situation, I wanted to chime in as devil's advocate. Thank you, by the way, Brett, and anyone out there. Please challenge the things I say. That makes for good content, and I enjoy doing it. So if you don't agree with me, write in and tell me. Anyway, Brett says, I want to start by saying I totally agree that the 4 teams that got into the playoffs make for the most exciting games, and Florida State probably would have been a rather lopsided affair that received far less TV ratings. However, leaving an undefeated Power 5 conference champion out, in a sense, sets a precedent that the regular season does not matter. Florida State won every game on their schedule and had a better resume than Alabama. They have a common opponent in LSU, who they beat by a larger margin, and they had to face Jaden Daniels for the entire game, while Alabama knocked him out of the game. They beat Clemson, they beat Miami. Florida State beat Miami, who beat Texas A&M, who Alabama struggled with a bit. Alabama needed 4th and goal from the 31 to beat an Auburn team that was blown out by New Mexico State at home. Even without Jordan Travis, they beat Florida and Louisville by double digits. They would be getting the backup Tate Rodemaker back for the playoffs, so it wouldn't have been the third-string quarterback again. The part, to me, that makes zero sense is that the committee ranked Florida State ahead of Ohio State and Georgia, almost as if they knew they're going to get criticized to the high heavens, so they compromised in that regard. The committee should have dropped Florida State in the rankings weeks ago instead of waiting until the final one. Thankfully, the 12-team playoff is coming so that this never happens again. I truly think it does come down to an SEC bias. There is an alternate reality where the committee ignored the Texas-Alabama head-to-head, left Texas out and put Florida State in. That would have been just as egregious to many as this move was. But everyone keeps vacillating between the 4 best teams or the 4 most deserving to support whatever they're arguing. Do we really think that Georgia, who lost by 3 on a neutral site to Alabama after winning 29 straight, isn't one of the best 4 teams in college football? At the end of the day, I will enjoy the holiday much more with the matchups that we got. But I do feel a bit uneasy about it all. I'm a completely unbiased college football fan with no dog in the fight. Thanks for reading if you did. This one is crazy long, but it is such a complex matter. I hear you, Rhett. Leaving Florida State out is not an easy thing to do. I think it was the right thing. I'm the college football playoff games have been often not good games. Like, so many of them are bad blowouts. I think Georgia, honestly, straight up, I almost feel like Georgia was the worst snub than Florida State. Because in my heart of hearts, deep down in my soul, I think Georgia could beat any of the 4 teams in the college football playoff. And I don't feel that way about Florida State. The great team, but now Georgia had a shot and they lost. So they can't argue because they blew it. But it feels weird. I don't care about this conversation, I think, honestly, because we're never going to have this conversation again. We're going to a 12-team playoff. So we're not going to have bowl games that don't matter anymore. We're going to have more playoff games. It's going to be better all around. A 12-team playoff is going to we should honestly make it more. I want to have, 20 teams in. I mean, I really bowl games matter less than ever before. If your team made a bowl game, but your quarterback is any good, he's in the transfer portal and not playing, or going to the NFL and not playing. Bowl games matter less than ever before. How about we make them matter by making them playoff games? That's a great idea to me. Instead of adding just 12, let's add even more. Just have more meaningful football games. But we will never, ever have a situation like this again where Florida State gets left out, because with more teams, they'd make it in easily and could prove themselves. And so the thing that really frustrates me is that everyone's saying, well, we don't like the 4 teams that were chosen, and everyone has an opinion. It should have been this or that. I'm going to cuss a couple times here in this show. I'm not going to go back and cut them out. So there's going to be a couple of swears in this show, and it's what it is. I fucking hate that we didn't just expand the playoff this year. We can't do 6. We can't figure it out. How do we have an extra game? Like, what? What if we just say, hey, Florida State plays Georgia and Alabama plays Texas? Winners play Washington and Michigan. And then the winners of those play for the national title. Give Michigan and Washington a first-round bye. Have Alabama play Florida State. Have Georgia play Texas. We could have done that. Believe it or not, we could have done that. But the world is so inflexible that we just get stuck. We're like, we can't. No, we didn't plan for that. We can't do that. I'm like, I hate it. I hate it so much. The true story here is not that the wrong team got put in the playoff or left out of the playoff. The story should be the lack of flexibility in corporate America is unbelievable. How much more money would have been made if we made Georgia and Florida State part of the playoffs? That would have got amazing TV ratings, and we didn't have the flexibility to foresee that. That's what irritates me more than anything. We're just, well, this is how it is. We're stuck one more year. Change it. Emergency playoff game. We need to add 2 more teams. Solved. Make Zach Schaumler college football commissioner. I don't know, man. It's just the lack of flexibility from people is a massive weakness in our society in general, and it drives me nuts. Daniel writes in, says, imagine a Joe Flacco versus Lamar Jackson AFC title game, assuming seeding works out. Would Joe Flacco be in the Hall of Fame if he leads the Browns to a Super Bowl victory? Not a Hall of Famer, but I said this earlier. Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, AFC Championship game rematch. Joe Flacco against the quarterback who replaced him and his former team. Oh, by the way, division rival? I want that so badly, man. Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson playoff game in Baltimore. Woo! Can we make that happen? Please, let's make it happen. I want to watch that. That's amazing television, and I think it's going to happen. Whatever we can do to make that happen, I don't care if week 18 the Browns lose on a crappy no-call pass interference or something, but it makes it so they're seated properly to play Baltimore. I'll be like, I know what you did, NFL. You messed with the schedule. You messed with things to make a better matchup happen. And for once, fair enough. I appreciate it. Thank you, NFL. Thank you. Richmond writes in, it's really long. I don't feel like I have the heart to read this one because it's really long, man. And I love you, Richmond. The basic point of your question is that there's problems in New Orleans. You write a lot about what you think it is. I want to tell you what I think the problem is in New Orleans. It's the offensive coaching, especially the receiver position. The lack of communication between the quarterback and receivers has been awful. Receivers running the wrong routes, missing assignments, running routes poorly, missing hand signals, not stopping in zones when you're running zone coverage, running a route against zone coverage, stuff like that, not knowing how to convert your route against man coverage. The receiving coach in New Orleans, I went on a rant earlier this year about it, has been absolutely awful. And who should hire Ben Johnson? Dude, how about Ben Johnson coaching the Saints? Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, coaching Derek Carr and the talent in New Orleans in an awful division. The Saints just need to hire an offensive coach. And I think Ben Johnson being the head coach of the Saints, he made Jared Goff look really good. What could Ben Johnson do for Derek Carr? I think good stuff. I think that's the Saints' job is actually a really good one. A lot of talent on offense and defense. A quarterback, Derek Carr, who's done good stuff in the past. So I think with a good coach and a good relationship with the coach and good coaching on offense, could do really good stuff again in New Orleans. I like the idea of the Saints hiring a really good offensive coach. And Ben Johnson really, really excites me. Maybe Eric Bieniemy, though, too. I just want to see the Saints go offensive side of the football and hire an offensive coach to work with Derek Carr and get the most out of the offense. And I don't think Derek Carr is a total bum. He makes boneheaded mistakes and isn't great. But we also thought Jared Goff was once a bum, and he just threw 5 touchdowns against the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton. So, man, I think a good offensive coach is going to go a long way for New Orleans. Adam writes in. Adam says, good morning, Zach. Wow, it's hard to believe that it has been just shy of 2 years since I wrote in about my confidence that the Rams could win the Super Bowl. Oh, how last year brought me back to earth. I like to rank teams every week for fun, and I finished my rankings and found the Rams at 13th with a 6-7 record. Am I being biased? I look at the teams below them and felt justified. Maybe it's because I'm a fan of the Rams, but we seem like a scary team to face right now. I don't think I'd say we'll have a deep playoff run, but if we make it, we could definitely ruin a good team season. What do you expect to see from the Rams the last couple weeks, and what do you think the perception of the Rams is? P.S. If we lose to the Commanders, this is all a joke. No, they did win. They're 7-7 now. The Rams are fun, man. The Rams are going to give us a good playoff game. I really believe that, if they make it in. I don't think the Rams are a Super Bowl contender, but they are fun to watch. You're right. And I totally agree. Eric writes in last question that Eric says, hey, Zach, I want to know your thoughts on the AFC playoff race. I think there are a bunch of good teams in contention that aren't even in playoff spots currently, like Buffalo, Denver, and Houston. Which wildcard team do you think could make the most noise, assuming they made the playoffs? Thanks, Eric. Which wildcard team in the AFC could make the most noise in the playoffs? Buffalo, for sure. After beating the tar out of Dallas, maybe go, oh, wow. They are very, very capable. After that, though, I think it's only Buffalo. Like, the other options that could be wildcard teams in the AFC. You know what? I guess Cleveland would be a wildcard team. They're the number 5 seed right now. They feel pretty strong there. Cleveland could win a Super Bowl. So that's the best wildcard team in the AFC or the NFC. Although I guess Dallas or Philly is going to be a wildcard team. So the number 5 seed in both the AFC and the NFC is really strong this year. Whether it be Dallas, Philly, or Cleveland. But then in the AFC, like there's 3 wildcard teams. So Cleveland's one of them. I think Buffalo's really good. But then who's the last really good AFC team? Cincinnati with Jake Browning, the Colts with Gardner Minshew, Houston with CJ Stroud, who's injured right now with a concussion, trying to recover. Maybe Denver at 7-7. Like, the teams that can make noise in the wild card spot in the AFC are really only Buffalo or Cleveland. And I don't think Houston wins a playoff game, but they make one that's a win in of itself. Same with Indy, same with Cincinnati. Although I will say this, if the Bengals if the playoffs started today, Cincinnati would play Kansas City at Kansas City, which they're about to do in 2 weeks. So the Bengals might rematch Cincinnati and play Cincinnati twice in the span of like a 3-week stretch, which if they lose at Kansas City on Christmas Eve, the Bengals do. Then they play them again on January 14th in the wild card round. I like the chances of a team playing a second game. Kind of like when the Giants almost beat the Patriots at week 17 in 2007. And then like a month or two later in the Super Bowl, they rematch, month and a half later, whatever it is. They did beat them in the second game. So I think this game, Bengals at Kansas City on New Year's Eve, 2 weeks from now, could be a game that is rematched very quickly after that in a playoff game. And I'm really fascinated if Cincinnati can hang around with Kansas City. I think they can, because Kansas City's got a good defense, but not a lot of weapons on offense. And the Bengals defense is actually pretty interesting. I think, man, Bengals at Kansas City, great game on Christmas Eve, week 17, and maybe a really interesting playoff game as well. Guys, I love you. Thank you for tuning in. Song of the week this week is Tell You by Tours. T-O-R-S is a great band. I love them, Tours. And their song, Tell You. Woo! A lot of tears this week listening to that. I love it. Guys, I love you. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you soon. And ba-dum-bum, bam, we are done.